Tell me a little bit about your journey.
I went to law school 2 weeks in, realized it wasn't for me. So I came back and I cried a lot because I was dating somebody who lived in Paris. I was very sad to leave and move back.
Was he French?
European, not French. So then I was trying to figure out, is there a possibility for me to move back? What should I do?
When life breaks your heart, it's easy to think it's because of who you are.
I grew up as someone who didn't have much self-worth. I was an overweight child. I did feel not good enough. Pre-COVID, I was working 16 hours a day. I had no time for myself. Should I be like super honest?
Pooja, welcome to Be Banter.
Thank you for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you with us, and it's just wonderful to be on the same color without planning.
Without planning, a
Yeah.
color which apparently we both don't wear very often.
They don't wear, but it's a happy color.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your journey. What I'm curious to know, did doing something with desserts come from a passion of loving desserts, or was it somewhat seeing a gap in the market?
I wish it was seeing a gap in the market, because then that would mean that I was super smart very young.
Yeah.
But it also
How young?
very young. I started baking when I was 6 years old.
And
Uh,
who got you into that?
So my bua, actually. So this is a story I love to tell because as a kid, I used to get bored very often. And one day I was staying with her, and she used to make me do all kinds of activities. Like, I learned how to knit with her, how to stitch. And one day I was really annoying her, and she was baking something in the kitchen. So I have a picture of this as well. And she put me on the kitchen table and she's like, "We're going to bake brownies today." And I think something about that whole process was so mesmerizing for a 6-year-old to see, like, regular ingredients like butter, sugar, flour, eggs, chocolate go into this bowl and then come out of the oven. And it was almost like happiness that was coming out. Like, I always say this, like, it's something that you do that just brings people joy. Like,
And the smell.
and the smell and that feeling of just like being able to see something that you've created kind of stayed with me. And my mom used to run a small home bakery, like a small chocolate shop from home. So my weekends were always like helping her. She used to do a killer chocolate mousse, and
So that says it all.
Yeah.
And it's your mom's
it's my
bakery.
mom's home kitchen bakery.
Yeah.
She never really pushed herself. She would do it out of like love as well. And so it just kind of stayed with me. I was a very loved child in school because every Monday, whatever I'd baked, I would take it to school. So everyone loved it. And that's how the seed kind of came to be. And back then, now this is a really long time ago, like, being a pastry chef wasn't really a profession that you could, follow.
Take forward, yeah.
Yeah. And there were not that many chefs, just female chefs, for sure, there weren't any. And even male chefs, there weren't as many. So for me, it was about, I want to become a lawyer. So I was like, okay, this is the profession that I can do and this can be my passion, because I didn't think that this could actually earn me any money back then. And so I went to law school. 2 weeks in, realized it wasn't for me. Went back to my parents, told them, listen, I'm really sorry.
How old were you then?
16 and a half, 17, yeah. And I told them, I don't think I can do this. The dream was to open a cafe. So it wasn't really to be a chef as such, but it was like, oh, I love people. I love baking. I would love.
But by then, were you an excellent baker?
I'd like to think so, yes. And I mean, I didn't know much because finding recipes online was hard. You could only rely on, I used to have like Tarla Dalal cookbooks, and I used to rely on, things that my mom taught me. The internet wasn't what it's today. You didn't have like millions of recipes. You had to kind of mix and match, see what worked for the Indian home kitchen. You didn't get cream, heavy cream, butter, unsalted butter. There was like only these many ingredients that you could work with. So it was challenging, but that's what made it fun for me. And so then they said, educate yourself. So this is what you really want to do. Degree is important. So study it and then you can figure what you want to do. So then I studied hospitality. I went to Switzerland. I spent 4 years there. Amazing experience, like going from Bombay to really like opens your mind up. You're living with people from 60 different nationalities. Suddenly you're learning so much about the world.
Yeah.
And it's like fully like a cultural change.
Yeah.
And tasting like the best chocolate and the best desserts. And, we grew up like having a lot of American style desserts. So there was always brownies, cheesecake, donuts. So moving to Europe was a completely different kind of pastry that I had never seen before.
Wow.
Yeah.
And after the 4 years, you were like absolutely certain this is what you wanted to do. That's why you went, because sometimes, and it was only pastry, or it wasn't like spilling over to food?
Never. So the thing is, so in our college in Switzerland, we had to do 3 months of hot kitchen. We had to go through all the departments. And the minute I went to the hot kitchen, I was like, this is not for me. It was just not something I enjoyed at all. And the minute I walked into the pastry kitchen, I was like, this is it. This is where I want to be.
But it was challenging because I remember back then there was only one, like a cafe which served only desserts, which was just desserts.
Yeah.
And I remember when it started, and I don't know what happened, whether it picked up, didn't pick up. But I remember the concept being at a time when even there were not so many coffee shops.
Yeah.
And maybe it just started at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And but I was very interested by the fact that you just go there and get tea, coffee, and desserts.
Way ahead of its time.
Way ahead of its
Yeah.
time. So that was the only thing and basically, were you at all inspired by that? Were you sort of around that?
I don't think I was here when that was. I think I was already in Switzerland.
What inspired you to have something which is like a cafe of only desserts?
So then I moved to Paris. I studied pastry there for 9 months. I interned at a chocolate shop. That's when I saw what pastry could be. You walk into a pastry shop and it really looks like art, and it feels like the chef is an artist. And for me, I was like, okay, can I bring this feeling back?
This only your eyes can see. If I went to a pastry shop, I'd never look at pastry as an art.
So beautiful. Everything is like textured and colored. And, for me, it was actually, there was a moment I was leaving. I remember this so clearly. I was leaving Switzerland. I was obviously extremely sad that I was leaving Europe. And we were in Zurich, and we went to the Sprungli Cafe. And I remember walking in and seeing that display fridge and just like being mesmerized by it and just looking at it and saying, I've never seen anything so beautiful. And yeah, and for me, that was like, okay, why I want to do something like that. So I think the idea came from there. And then the journey in Paris led me to tasting macros for the first time.
That made you the macaron queen when you...
Yeah, it took a few years after that, but that's the name that came to be, which I happily accept. And, the fact that something that really inspires you and pushes you, then you become recognized for it. I think that's not great. That's not something I set out to do, but it just came by accident. And I think it's a beautiful accident.
And the name Le 15
Yeah.
came from being in Paris because it's
so,
French.
Yeah, so Paris is broken into 20 different arrondissements, and the 15th is where I lived. So it was my home for a year that I lived there. The feeling of belonging, I always say that, my school was there, the Eiffel Tower was in the 15th. It's really like going to your local pastry shops there, your metro stops. So it almost was like my home away from home. And when I came back, I was like, I want to have that same feeling that I did when I was in the 15th. And so when I was running on the treadmill, I think all my best ideas come from you when I was running. And so I was running and, I was like, hey, I wanted to be Paris. What should I call it? Started off with like maybe 75 because that's area code for Paris. And so maybe 75 is too broad. Let's like narrow it to like where I really lived. And so that's where Le 15 was for.
What was your first thing that you did when you came back to India to start your empire that you created?
Oh, it's should I be like super honest?
No, yeah, tell me.
So I came back and I cried a lot because I was dating somebody who lived in Paris. I was very sad to leave and move back. So the first 3 months I was just in my house and I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to do anything.
Was he French?
European, not French, yeah. And so then I was trying to figure out, is there a possibility for me to move back? What should I do? I was very young. I was 22 too.
Yeah, but that's the time when the heart aches the most.
Yeah.
Without brain.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm 39 now. I don't think much has changed, but still. Yeah.
Where is he now? He's gone with the wind then?
Okay. Yeah, but I think he just took me to my destination and then kind of left.
He was studying with you?
Yes. Yeah. And so I was sad for the first 3 months. And I think a lot of great inspiration does come from pain. And I was at home, and then my parents were like, stop moping around, like, do something. And I just started baking for friends and family. So if someone had a birthday, I would make something. And 3 months into this, my parents were like, okay, now, you're really messing our kitchen up. And my dad has always been super ambitious for me. So he's like, okay, this is great that you're doing this, but start thinking a little bit bigger,
You have siblings?
I have an older brother, yes.
And he's
Also in hospitality. He studied with me in Switzerland as well. And when I moved to Paris, he came back and started a restaurant on the Bombay-Nasik highway. And that was his baby. And then the 15 was mine.
and he's still there, or he's with you now?
No, he is now he's moved to real estate. So he's kind of pre-COVID kind of shifted and sold that off.
So come back to baking for the
Yeah, been with friends and family. And then dad was like, dream bigger, think bigger. And I think having a support system that kind of believes in you and pushes you more than you do is extremely important. And so I got a small 500 square foot kitchen in Lower Parel. And it was just a team of 3 of us. And we just started baking there. And the thing is that I got a lot of like people asking me, what did you learn in Paris? Can you teach us? Can you teach us? And that fact that everyone just wanted to learn what I learned there, I was like, there's a market in here for classes. And at that point, no one in Bombay was really doing organized, professional kind of teaching. It was mostly people in their homes, and online didn't exist at all. And so I just started teaching classes, and I was like, okay, this is what we learned, and this is what I've, and that kind of gave me the boost,
the confidence.
and we didn't have any retail outlets. We just had a kitchen.
So when were you teaching? At what age?
23.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because teaching is not just about, like sharing your talent, but it's also about structuring your classes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that. And I feel like it came kind of naturally to me. So I enjoyed it and I did it. And that's what got a lot of people to our kitchen. It made me meet a lot of people. It made me, so I could talk about Low 15 more naturally, organically, without, being in anyone's face. So
Yeah.
it was good. It was, I think, the push that I needed.
And then?
And then it just, everything feels like a haze now. But it was because we were just working so much. It was a small team, pretty much.
When did you start the cafe?
The cafe came much later. So we started from the kitchen. 6 months into the kitchen, we opened our first retail kiosk, which was outside a salon in Worli called Shama. So we had a small little counter there. And the team from Good Earth visited that counter and they really liked it. So they reached out to me and they said, hey, we love the work that you're doing. Would you like to open a small similar kiosk at Good Earth? And I think that moment for us was really the big shift and change, because at that point it was, our audience, everyone who went to Good Earth went and bought a box of macaroons. And I tried to explain it to kids who are...
So it was mainly macaroons at that time?
It was similar menu, macaroons, cupcakes, brownies, tarts, that kind of thing that was on the shelves. And then
all sweet.
All sweet.
Nothing
savory. Yeah. The savory came later. It did for a while. And then Good Earth led to the team at Palladium reaching out to us and saying, we love what you're doing. Why don't you do it at Palladium? And we opened a small kiosk opposite Indigo Delhi in Palladium, which was mainstay for many years. And that then kind of changed things and brought a lot of momentum.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And what about the Zomatos and Swiggies and all that came? Yeah, when it arrived, did it boost your business to another level?
Yeah, I mean,
when was that shift of completely from a small unit, small setup to becoming calling yourself an entrepreneur?
That's the thing about I was, being young and naive. I think that's great energy to have. So if you're young and naive and watching this, I think that energy of inexperience is the best thing you can have, because your brain really believes it can do anything and everything. So for me, I used to call myself a serial entrepreneur even at 23, because I was just like, I'm going to do this. And I started writing cookbooks and posting things. I was doing multiple things. So It
And
always felt
cookbooks was all sweet.
all sweet, yeah. So it
How
always
did they
felt
do?
very good. We did my first one was called The Big Book of Treats. That was published by Penguin. National bestseller, has won many awards.
Fantastic.
It became like a baking Bible for many young kids who started baking back then, solving the problem of how do I bake with local ingredients I can buy from my kirana store and make it in my house. So I was like, okay, you buy this butter and this cream and this chocolate, and this is how you make it. So that was still, it's been 11 years now since that came out.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So
So you're a author, you are obviously a chef,
podcaster,
yeah, podcaster, and you were a judge in MasterChef.
yes.
And how was that experience?
Oh, it was lovely. It was I was the judge for season 8 of MasterChef India, and I was extremely nervous and scared before I started because what I did was so small and niche and in Bombay mostly, and now I would be doing something that would be on national TV, and it scared me a lot initially, but when I went there, it was like I just took to it, and I was like, I love this. I could keep doing this. This comes easy, and it felt like a really safe and fun environment. I love the chefs that I worked with, and when you are running your own business and then you go on a show like that, it just feels like it's 10 times easier than running your business. So I really enjoyed it, and yeah, it brought me into a lot more homes and made Love 15 a more nationally known brand. So
Yeah.
I'm always grateful for that.
And is it like a proprietor company, or is it now?
It's a private limited, yeah.
So do you have funding?
We did do some funding for friends and family pre-COVID.
And that helped?
It definitely helped. And now we're at that stage again where we're trying to figure out what next and how to kind of scale it and how to change it around.
And what would scaling up mean?
That's a very good question. That's where I'm at right now.
No, but
it's
from-
it's something that I think about a lot. For me, it's earlier. If you had asked me this question pre-COVID, I like to define who I am as pre and post-COVID. I think it really did change me. I think pre-COVID, it was like this adrenaline, this youth, this inexperience, this rush, like go, get everything, like be this total go-getter. And then when everything fell silent and paused, I think for the first time in 10 years, I had time to really assess, think about what I was doing, what was the intention, why I was doing it. So this question that you ask comes from a lot of what I've been thinking about, for the last couple of years. So what that scale is, I've just about figured it out. Hopefully we'll see it come to life in a couple of years.
Yeah, you have to create your deck and then make a nice pitch. And this is where your money is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that's the easy part. I think the hard part is really figuring out what you want to do and why you want to do it. Because the thing I've realized about entrepreneurship is that you are hit with 100 challenges every single day. Every day that you go to work, you keep questioning yourself, like, why am I doing this? And if you don't have your purpose and you don't have your why, and if it's just to put some numbers on a deck, it's going to fail. So for me, it was very important to really realize and find that purpose of what I'm doing and what change I want to create. And only when I felt completely ready, that's when I'm like, okay, now I'll think about what scale means for me.
And what is your purpose?
That's another deep. I think it's in very simple terms. It's about just bringing more joy and making people feel better.
You feel that sweet, delicious things brings joy to people? Unabashedly?
Yes, with my whole heart. I have to convert you.
And then when they've had it, what happens with that guilt? How do you...
But that's...
If I were to give you my advice,
yes,
I would say that when you eat delicious, sweet things, there's no doubt you feel very, very satiated and happy. And it definitely is the happy hormones swinging all over your body. But a couple of hours later or an hour later, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of people who feel guilty they did it.
Yeah.
So it's like a guilty pleasure. But I think one of the big challenges on how to really scale up would be to change the mindsets of that guilty feeling. Because I'm surrounded with people like that. Like, I mean, whether it's in India, whether it's abroad, I have friends who love desserts. And when they have it, I'd say 90% of them crib after eating it. So I always turn around, not being not such a dessert person, then why do you eat it if you're going to crib? So the idea would be to have a sort of a psychologist or somebody with you who tells you that it's the moment that you're enjoying.
Yeah.
And that gives you so much happiness, almost like an orgasm, that don't regret it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a big reason to change mindsets.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who's largely struggled with weight my entire life, I understand that sentiment, and I completely feel what you're saying. I go through those motions as well. But the mindset that I use is that I'd rather, when I want to eat something that I know has the best ingredients, comes from the right source, that makes me feel that is portion control, that's not like extremely. So I'd rather have one amazing bite of something that I know is worth it, rather than try to substitute it with things that has a lot of chemicals and things that I don't know what they're going to do to my body. So I feel like that one bite of indulgence is something that I, and I allow myself that. I'm like, okay, if it's a birthday, or if it's something that if I'm PMSing, or if I have a craving, I'll do that one thing, and I won't feel guilty about it. So I feel like it's a deeper mindset thing, and I think that
most deserved one.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be, I think we've just built ourselves into this culture of like where food, and I think the relationship we have with our food, and I don't only think it's dessert, I think it's everything. It's whether the way people view carbs or they view different things. It's the impact that and I really like to believe that food has the power to stir up so many emotions, and it brings so many memories and nostalgia. Like, you eat something that your grandmom makes, and that takes you to a completely different space. Or you could eat something that reminds you of something that someone you love made for you, and it takes,
or the aroma of food reminds you of some memory.
Yeah, of memory. It takes you back in time. So I think food is a very powerful tool, and you're absolutely right where it's our association with it and the way we view it and think about it. Those changes definitely, I feel, need to happen. But that's when people are ready to make that happen,
I mean, food is, in so many cases, directly associated with the psychological makeup of a person. Because when they are also low, they can tend to eat a lot or not eat.
Yeah.
So, coming back to business and like in the sense of the kitchen.
Yeah.
What are the challenges that you face in the kitchen?
Oh my God, I could be all day. So many. I think when I started,
like, you don't have problems with ingredients, do you?
Sometimes yes. I'll give you an example of last year. Suddenly, chocolate prices shot up because of a global crisis, cacao crisis, and the chocolate that we used to buy for, say, 1,100 rupees a kilo now suddenly was 2,800.
My God, that sounds like Trump's taxes.
Yeah. So suddenly the whole industry were like, what do we do? Because there's this massive, and you can't pass that on to your customers because you can't suddenly change your pricing like crazy, which we tried to do, but we had to absorb a lot of that. So one whole season last year for everybody, it was really tough because chocolate prices shot up. Things like that keep happening all the time. We import our almond flour. So sometimes something happens. And
why do you import almond flour?
Because the quality, the one that I like to use, we get it from Blue Diamond, which comes from California.
Oh,
it's Californian almonds, yeah. So there's a couple of things that we import. We import our chocolate and we import our almond flour. The rest we try to use as much as we can locally. But there are issues there. There's issue of supply here.
And chocolate is the best is from Switzerland?
France, Switzerland, yeah. Belgium, kind of.
Why haven't they been able to perfect the chocolate here?
There is a lot happening with chocolate in India. I think there's a great movement. There are a lot of really talented pastry chefs that are doing great work. I think it's going to get there. I think it's now that Bean to Bar and artisanal chocolate and chocolate from India that's really shining as well. So it'll get there. It's just they had a head start. So yeah, could be.
But they don't have that taste of chocolate somehow. They haven't been able to achieve it here. I mean, you can tell that it's got that little muddy kind of
Gritty
taste.
taste,
Yeah. Compared to good chocolate. We were talking about the challenges in the kitchen. So the chocolate prices went up. And did the price for the consumer also go up?
We tried to control it as much as we could possibly. For certain things, yes, for where we could change it. And then obviously it made us more creative in the kitchen. So we're like, what recipes can we make that don't use as much chocolate? Can we do things with like fruits and lemons and berries and things like that?
As for us, diamonds. And diamonds really went up. We said, what jewelry can we make without diamonds?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we managed.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of back to normal. Hopefully it stays like that.
And how many chefs do you have?
We're a team of maybe 25 of us in the kitchen. Yeah.
But there's one central kitchen?
Yes.
And then it kind of...
And then we have stores. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That's how.
so that's how you control it.
Yes. Everything's produced in one place and then we ship it from there.
And your office is the kitchen.
Yes.
And how do you innovate? Like, do you ever come up with like new improved?
All the time. That's the whole fun of the job as well. I think that
What do you improve?
everything. Can this flavor be better? Can this texture be better? We did something last year with this. Can we change it around a little bit? For example, we have a Diwali menu that we come up with every year and from last 15 years. So every Diwali is the only time I really play with Indian flavors. Because when I lived in France, I saw that a lot of Japanese chefs did that with their culture. They took like Japanese ingredients, fused it with French techniques. So when I came back, I said, how can I do that for India? And we started testing. So we did like a whole bunch of exciting things. And every year we kind of play with that and say, okay, last year we did Kaju Katli macaroons, for example. What can we do this year that's different? So, and that's fun. And that like...
And how did you do?
Extremely well. I think the most popular flavors that we've done from the India collection that have done so well have been masala chai. We did a milk chocolate masala chai macaron, which I also made at a global competition in Boston with toasted hazelnuts and lemongrass foam. It was very good. Then we did...
Maybe you can do butter chicken in London.
No. The macaron? No!
I'm kidding because you're so crazy about butter chicken.
I saw a new matcha reel where people are like now obsessed with matcha and they bring matcha and everything.
Yeah.
And there was this reel with this man showing how to make butter chicken with matcha, and then in the end he's like, go make this somewhere else, not here. So
so it's not so bad. Huh? The
Target, yeah. So things like that. So we did pan macaroons when we started. That was really popular.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
And yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me over the years has been to try to make most things without eggs, because India is a big eggless market. So when I moved back, I was very young. I had the arrogance of a French chef, and I was like, no, this recipe can only be made like this, and it can't be made any other way. And my mom used to always tell me, she's like, you have to somehow bend and adapt to the market you're catering to. And for a couple of years, I was like, no. And then I finally said, okay, if I'm doing this, then I'm going to take this and make it take it on as a challenge. And I'm going to try and do it where it's going to be so good, you can't even differentiate between the two. And it took many years and many failed experiments. And then we have eggless macaroons. We have a whole eggless menu. I wrote a cookbook called Can't Believe It's Eggless, which was actually did even better than the first one because we tried to do those techniques without eggs. So, yeah.
Wow. That's business though.
Yeah. It is.
Maybe you should try a milk cake macaroons.
I thought about it, but then I just felt it would be too sweet. So I have to figure out how to break the...
Or that patisa, you get that...
Yeah.
I mean, for Punjab, it would be really good.
Yeah.
Like the Punjab market.
Yeah.
Do you cater to different markets?
We do. We ship out our macarons to most cities. And it's fun. We also made this halwa macaroon. And we did a hazelnut and a moong dal halwa. So we kind of have fun with it and we play around with a lot of things. So
Wow, that's very innovative.
yeah, it's fun.
And so my team had a question which I will read out. And it says, when life breaks your heart, it's easy to think it's because of who you are. Did you ever experience that link between self-image and love? I don't know why this question has been written for you. It's off the topic for Live 15, but let's see how you answer it.
I think I've been very vocal about my struggle with self-worth and feeling enough and really coming to a space where I'm comfortable with who I really am. So yes, it's been hard over the years to be in situations where things don't go your way, to think like, oh, this is because of me and this is because of who I am. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of self-awareness, a lot of uh, different kinds of therapies to kind of get to a place where there's a beautiful acceptance that comes in and you're like, wow, this is who I am. And it's taken many years and a lot of challenges to get there. But I feel like challenges come in your way to kind of break you open. So yeah, whoever asked that question, it used to be a real struggle of self. And now it's mostly self-acceptance. So the last breakup that I had, I was like, it's not me, it's you. So it was good.
That's great.
It was a good feeling to have.
But the girl that I'm sitting across, to me, appears to be somebody who had a lot of support growing up from a daddy and a mom.
Yeah.
And also had targets and pretty much got to her targets, created goals, passion driven. Why would you have challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. Feels like therapy now.
No, but it's an honest question.
Yeah.
Because talking to you, I meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are very few that, are so driven by their passion that they create businesses and very successful businesses and are still on that journey.
Yeah.
And they have had support.
Yeah.
And they've created success in terms of brand as well as it being lucrative. And it's very wholesome for the mind and the soul. And of course, you're creating stuff that makes you happy.
Yeah.
So why?
I think it comes from a lot of and a lot of high achieving people, a lot of people that are extremely successful come from a space of not feeling good enough, and this is their way of filling holes and spaces between themselves because you're not getting it from within. So you're trying to do things external to you to kind of feel that sense of belonging or feel that sense of achievement or feeling like I am worthy enough if I do this, if I achieve this. And a lot of people are on that journey and they go through that. I think when I started out as well, when I was very young, I think for me that was it was never enough. It was like, okay, what can I do? Can I do this? That'll make me feel good enough. Can I do this? I grew up as someone who didn't have much self-worth for reasons which, I was an overweight child. I did feel not good enough. I had my own struggles with accepting who I was as a person. And I think my motivation came from proving people wrong, I was always told from the extended family that, oh, you're a girl, what can you achieve? They told my parents, why are you spending so much money on her education? She's just going to come back and get married. So I had this almost anger within me where I had to prove a point, where I was like, oh, I'm going to show you because you said that I wasn't good enough and I couldn't do anything. I'm going to do it. And that was a driver for me. So most people have certain drivers and they come from sometimes they come from places of lack within you. And for me, it did come from there till it reached a point where you realize that the reason you're doing something is not for anybody else. It doesn't matter. And that's been a beautiful journey for me as well, to kind of see that, to go through that, and now create from a space of, I want to create for myself because I can and I'm really good at it. not because I have to prove anything to anyone or have to fill a certain void in myself, but because I have that love within me to create it. And I feel like that's a journey that most people go through in their lives. And if you go through it and you see it through, I think it's a very beautiful experience.
Very accomplished, I must say, because I mean, I don't see, like I said, the girl sitting in front of me could have had, but but I'm sure you have not only made a success of your business, but also of your own self, because it's like everything is a journey, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Everything is a journey, but you have to have some sort of goals. You have to have some sort of a target. Otherwise, you're just aimlessly going. And yeah, there is a lot of young people out there who are confused, and they are struggling with very, very similar challenges where they are trying to prove to people so that it's a sort of an acceptance. Very early in my life, when I studied to be, I was a mathematics student, and I did my master's in mathematics, which was very tough.
Yeah.
And I was also modeling simultaneously. And I came from a family which was an industrial family. My father was a very successful industrialist, a very well-known man in Delhi. And, and he really wanted me to be in part of the business. But I wanted to be a model, because while I was studying, I applied for Miss India and I had won Miss India. And then my desire was that I wanted to go into the big dash, dash, dash world of glamour and, that world. And I went into modeling, and when I got married here in Bombay, I was considered a model. And there was such a challenge in me to prove to people who I met. Like today, I would not even think about it. But at that time, that I'm not just a dumb blonde, like I've done my master's in mathematics. I've achieved this, I've achieved that. I was always trying to, and that I came from my father had huge recognition in Delhi. And I was always trying to prove that. And at some point, I stopped. Because, when the women would look at me judgmentally, that, oh, you're a model. A model. And
that's all you are. You're a pretty face. Like that's who you are.
Yeah. And that, I got married to somebody who was wealthy and, oh. And I was always trying to say somewhere down the line that, listen, I come from this kind of family. I'm this. And that proving yourself. Yeah. And at some point, I just stopped. Yeah. And I said, what am I doing? Like, who are these people?
Exactly.
And then you really start your life.
Yeah.
I felt, at least that adult part of my life. So that was a big revelation. I've never said that before. But yeah, in terms of what you are saying, like proving yourself, and it's a headache.
Yeah, and I think it's a journey within, right? Like once you accept, you know who you are, And
what about love? What about love for you? Like being a successful young woman.
Yeah.
How do men feel about it?
That's a conversation for a whole different podcast. We can spend hours chatting about that. No, I think it's been, I've met some really good guys who've been extremely kind and loving. And I think that part of this journey has also been meeting them and seeing myself from their eyes. So I think it's been a good ride, yeah.
And no plans to tie the knot and
when I do find the partner that I feel I would like to spend the rest of my life with, 100%.
And it's easy to bring a guy into your fold.
Yeah.
And maybe have sort of, work with similar interests, because otherwise a busy person like you and a busy guy doing his own thing, you won't have much time, What are your work hours?
Wow. Should we use this podcast to matchmake now? I think that would be great intention to set. No, I mean, I work, like I said, I had pre-COVID, post-COVID life. Pre-COVID, I was working 16 hours a day. I had no time for myself. Now I have I say no to most things. I really choose. I saw a Taylor Swift podcast last week where she says your energy is your currency and you should really, focus on where your energy goes. So I say no to as many things as I can. And whether that means that, my days are structured in a way where I have my mornings to myself. So I work out in the morning, I have breakfast with friends, and then I get to work. And
That's
spend,
nice.
yeah. And then I spend
And who are these friends that you have breakfast with?
everyone and anyone.
Like-minded people?
Yeah, like-minded
Working people?
Of course, like 100%, like people that I train with, people I work out with, I do different things. If anyone wants to meet me or they want advice or
You can only do this when you don't have children.
yeah, so I use
breakfast with friends.
I
Wow.
use it to my advantage. Of like 8 o'clock, let's meet here for
Yeah.
breakfast, and it's great because I'm on a different path right now, so I don't like to go out at nights. I like to sleep early. I'm training for I just finished High Rocks. Now I'm training for a marathon. So my goals are very focused, and that means that I have to live a very focused life. So I say no to many things, but I still make time for myself. So it's just changed, and it's great. I love it.
But how do you build stamina for a marathon?
You just train really hard.
You can't eat dessert.
You can't eat a lot of dessert.
You can have sugar, but sugar will give you that much.
Yeah, but the thing is that, like I said, you choose when you have what you have. Part of my life and my job is that. So I work with a nutritionist who kind of understands that and incorporates it in my plan. So I don't have to never have to say no to everything. And
Do you try everything you make? Bake?
More or less. I mean, if it's something new, then yes. If it's something that's been on the menu for a while, now we have a team, we have a quality team in place. And that's their main job, to check whether everything is right. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, I can look at something and know, is this right? Is this wrong?
Do you find that in your team, there are some people who are better than you in tasting?
I mean, I would really hope that there are people that are better than me. And like, I think that they're better than me in so many ways. Like their skills as chefs, because they do that day in and day out for many, many years. For me, I don't go back to the kitchen as much. So, like you have to keep practicing to get there. So I would say that they are far better than me today.
And in this day and age where health has become a big factor and sugar is the big evil.
Yeah.
Do you know, I'll tell you something interesting. I was on a flight and I had a stopover in New York and I was spending the night there in this TWA hotel in Terminal 4, JFK. And they have this TWA hotel. I checked in and there was a book there from the 1960s, a magazine, Life magazine. I was just flipping through because I was very interested in seeing their ads. One of the ads said, "Give sugar to your child." I'll send you that ad. I took a picture.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you and you'll be interested in that.
Yeah, please.
Your child needs energy. So do not, basically they were trying to go against the diet Coke. Do not give that to your child. But they were trying to promote sugar as the real thing.
Yeah.
And I found that very interesting because today sugar is the big evil.
Yeah.
So how do you are you putting the innovation in for people who are not having sugar, people who are not having flour, who want to stay away from maybe butter or eggs? I know you already are.
Yeah. So the good thing with macarons is that they're gluten-free. So they're made with almond flour, so there's no maida in them. Always, yeah. So that's a good thing for us already. And I feel like there's moments where I want Love 15 to be the brand that you trust when you want to indulge. So if you want to indulge and you really know that I have a shot to eat one sweet thing today and I want it to count, then you know that it's going to hit and it's going to hit every time. So I'd rather be placed there with where Love 15 is at. And I think through my own journey, I've always been in a space where I feel like inspiration and for something to really last and be meaningful, it has to come from within. So I'm on this journey and I am taking my time to figure it out and see what I like to work with. Does it mean that it has to be something that's sweetened with dates? Does it mean that it has to, something else has to be different? And I know I'll land at it, but I don't want to rush it and I don't want to push it. And I want it to come
At the right time.
at the right time and find me. And I'm sure it will. And when it does, then I will act fast. But right now,
And your product is completely toxic free.
yeah, I mean, we try to, there's no preservatives.
Yeah.
We make packaged cookies as well, which was something that took me a long time to perfect and make in a way where we don't add any additives, we don't add any preservatives.
That's great.
Keeping natural
So
ingredients.
children can have it safely.
Exactly. So we work really hard towards those things.
And how do you advertise yourself to the masses?
I mean, for us, we've really built our brand on social media. I think we try to stay as true and authentic, whether it is giving people a view into what our kitchen is like, telling stories from people who work there. We do a lot of workshops. We invite people into our space. So I feel you don't really have to go and shout out and say this is what we're doing, but sometimes just take people along for the ride and let them see and observe for themselves.
Yeah, and word of mouth, of course. And what about when we talk about scaling up? What about moving out of the country, like Dubai or?
Wow. I mean, I don't know. Right now, I think the goal is just to get out of Bombay first.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out. And
Or you aren't anywhere else?
no, not yet.
Delhi?
We ship there, but we don't have a physical presence.
Why not?
Um,
Chanakya is a big.
yeah, maybe soon.
So how does dad and mom feel about your business today?
Oh, they're extremely proud parents. My dad, especially, anything comes in the paper, anything shows up on social media, he tracks everything, and then he sends out. He'll spend like hours on his WhatsApp group, sending forward
So
to
sweet.
everybody. So they're extremely proud. Yeah.
Do you live with them?
I don't. I live alone. Yeah.
Does a successful entrepreneur make dating harder?
I mean, I think dating is just hard in general, no matter who you are today. It's just everyone I speak to, it's hard. It doesn't matter whether you're successful or not.
You think men are more difficult?
I don't know what's going on, but there's some juju. There's something happening for everybody. I think let's ask everyone here. I think, yeah, ask her. It's 25 and same thing. Yeah, it's tough.
Okay. Beauty related. What does beauty in everything mean to you?
Fully accepting things where they are. That would be beautiful.
Very nice. Yeah. Do you have a beauty regime, by the way?
It's awful. I don't.
I have great skin.
Thank you. It's I have my mom to thank for it. I don't use too many things. I've grown up seeing my mom completely leave her skin as natural and free as possible. So I try to do the same things, and it's very simple. It's very basic.
So you're mommy's fan, huh?
Yeah.
Mommy's fan and daddy's girl.
Yes.
Yeah. And finally, what would you tell a young person, whether in career, love, or identity, who feels lost and doesn't know which way to go?
I feel like within us, we already have like an internal navigation system that kind of tells us what we should be doing. I think there's just always so much noise around us that kind of blocks it. So my thing would just be to find your center and block out the noise and really listen to what is going on inside and act from there. I feel like sometimes it gets overwhelming when the path feels like there's so much I need to do and there's so many things to do and accomplish. But when I go through that, what I really focus on is just the next step. Like just block everything else out and say, what's the one best thing I can do today? And just focus and do that. And then that will lead you to the next one and the next one and the next one. And that's from Oprah, not from me, who I want to make someday. But yeah, that's it. Just do the things you can control.
How do you block everything out?
You train your mind to just not think about it. Like, for example, I'm training for 21-kilometer run in Bangkok in November. And sometimes, like last week when I was thinking about running 21K, I woke up like panicked one night. And then I broke it down and I said, this week, all I need to do is 3 runs of 30 minutes each, and that's all my energy will focus on. And I did great in those runs. In fact, I did much better than I've ever done. And I was like, okay, great. Now next week, I just have to do 40 minutes each. And I'm not thinking about 21. I'm just thinking about getting through the 40 minutes that day. That's it. And then hopefully by November, I would have done enough to make it through the 21 without thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they say yoga. I mean, I don't know if you do any yoga.
I do.
Do you?
I do.
Headstands is a great stamina builder.
Yeah. I'm on my chakrasan. I'm in my chakrasan era right
That's
now.
fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay, we're in the rapid fire round.
Okay.
What scares you more, running out of ideas for desserts or running out of relevance?
I know it's rapid fire, but a little long. The answer to this would be, I mean, I'd go for running out of ideas for desserts, because when you've been in any field long enough and you know what your core really is, relevance comes and goes. And I've been lucky enough to see many highs and many lows, be extremely relevant, not so relevant, relevant again. And you realize that that's not important at all. So, but it comes with experience. But creating something and having purpose is far more important.
And then that keeps you relevant anyway.
Yes.
What's the most non-glamorous, unfiltered part of your day that nobody would believe if they saw it?
I mean, I really want to start vlogging. That's something I want to do because I want people to see what I really do in the day. You have to see me in the kitchen. You won't believe that that's me. That's how I look. That's how I go. My team, when I dress up now, when I go back to the kitchen like this, they'll be like, who's this? Who is she? Because I'll be like just there, you know, doing my thing. I'll go to the bank. I'll process salaries. I'll be cleaning. I do all of it. So yeah.
Would you rather be remembered as a chef, an entrepreneur, or a cultural icon?
Wow. As someone who truly changed a field, I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who inspired others to do things.
One dessert that defines you?
Macaron.
Sweet. One thing you tell your 21-year-old self?
Oh, just breathe, relax. It's all going to be okay. It's never that serious.
And I wish those 21-year-olds would believe that.
I have a 19-year-old intern who keeps saying this to me. I'm like, this generation is good. They're sorted. He'll just be like, it's never that serious. It's never. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's never that serious. It's okay.
It's quite a difference between the Gen Z and millennial, right?
It's insane. I'm loving.
And what's the third one now?
Gen Alpha.
Yeah, Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
So which do you find easiest to work?
I mean, I'm working with Gen Z now, and I love it. I love it. I learn new things every day.
One word that captures where you are in life right now.
Peace.
Lovely. A kitchen habit you're embarrassed about.
My fridge is never stocked. I never would want you to come see my fridge at home.
At home, not in that kitchen.
Yeah, at home.
Who in the food world intimidates you the most?
I mean, a lot of people inspire me. I don't think anybody intimidates.
No?
No. I think very inspiring.
Who you kind of are a little bit in awe of, where you get a little bit gobsmacked?
I mean, when I was growing up, it was Sanjeev Kapoor, because that was the only chef that I knew, but he's always been so kind. And
what about Gordon Ramsay?
I'd love to hang with him. Yeah. I don't think he intimidates me. I think.
One person you'd love to bake for?
Oprah Winfrey.
Oh. And don't forget my cheesecake.
That I'll do for sure. I know it'll get to you. How do we get the cheesecake to Oprah's question?
Yeah. Okay, one quick thing before we close is that I hear you're writing a book.
Yes.
But on children's fiction.
Yes.
And tell me about that.
So it's called Arya and the Magic Apron. I've always wanted to write kids fiction, especially something for girls, because I feel like that's the journey that I went through, where you just want to feel like you're enough and have faith and trust in your own abilities. So it started from there. And yeah, it's a super cute book. It's about her learning to bake and something to do with a magic apron and a baking competition. So it's out soon. And
how thick is the book?
It's 10 chapters. Sorry, thick.
Oh, that's quite long though.
Yeah, it's young.
So it's not a bedtime story.
Yeah, young adults. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful illustrations.
So Pooja, it was absolutely wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And an insight into the entrepreneurship and the challenges and creating something which is not very common and not following the herd, I think was amazing. And I learned a lot about you and a lot about how to even deal with the younger people, and I think you're absolutely delightful.
Thank you.
And I know that you don't, and you leave your skin to nature mostly, but I'm going to present you with our skincare products.
Thank you.
Please do use it.
Yes.
They are vegan, they are non-toxic, like your
Yes.
macaroons are,
Yeah.
and they are result-orienting.
Okay.
And so they also create a difference
Thank
to
you.
your skin. So please use it and give us feedback.
Can I open it?
Yeah, of course.